It was a brisk Monday morning in Washington, D.C. The White House lawn glistened under the golden hue of the sun, and the press corps buzzed with energy as they awaited the day's briefing. Cameras were already rolling, laptops open, mics clipped, and every correspondent ready to dissect every syllable spoken from the podium. At the center of it all stood Karoline Leavitt, the youngest and fiercest White House press secretary America had ever seen. Since Donald Trump's re-election in 2024, the West Wing had seen a resurgence of unapologetic conservatism, and Karoline was its voice. Her confidence, charm, and sharp-witted delivery made her a media darling for the right and a menace to liberal commentators. Meanwhile, 225 miles away in New York City, the ladies of The View were preparing for their live segment. Today's hot topic? Trump's latest round of tariffs on European auto parts, Chinese electronics, and Mexican agricultural exports. The plan had shocked Wall Street but thrilled working-class voters who saw it as a win for American industry. But Whoopi Goldberg, co-host and Hollywood icon, wasn't having it. Let me get this straight, Whoopi said with her usual blend of sarcasm and scorn, Trump is saving America by making everything more expensive? Sounds like he's putting the tariff in terrible decision. The studio audience roared with laughter. Joy Behar added fuel and Sunny Hostin raised her eyebrows in agreement. But it was Whoopi's next line that would become the viral spark. If Trump had a brain cell for every tariff he slapped on the world, he might finally reach room temperature. The comment was crude, personal, and instantly viral. Within hours, it was clipped, shared, and memed across X, formerly Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook. Conservatives were furious. Liberals laughed. But the White House wasn't silent for long. That afternoon, Karoline Leavitt stepped into the James S. Brady press briefing room wearing a tailored navy blazer and her signature steel gaze. She smiled at the media pool, took a sip of water, and approached the podium. "Good afternoon," she began, brushing her hair behind her ear. "I'll get to policy updates in a moment, but first, I feel compelled to respond to something truly unfortunate that aired this morning on national television." Every journalist perked up. C-SPAN's camera zoomed in. Karoline continued. "A celebrity daytime talk show host who shall remain unnamed but stars in movies where she talks to ghosts. Mocked the President of the United States and the working men and women of this country who benefit directly from this administration's pro-American trade policy." Gasps rippled through the room. "I think it's time we remind Hollywood elites that tariffs aren't about cocktails and caviar, they're about reviving towns left behind, about steelworkers who can now afford braces for their kids and farmers who finally got a fair deal thanks to tough negotiation." Her voice sharpened. "Mock the president all you want. But when you mock the policies that feed families and rebuild communities, you're mocking the heart of America. And let me assure you, that's a fight you won't win." Boom. The room went silent. Reporters furiously typed. Even CNN's Jim Acosta sat speechless. Karoline raised one eyebrow. "Any questions?" A single hand shot up. "Karoline, was that aimed at Whoopi Goldberg directly?" She gave a small smirk. "I think the American people are smart enough to decide that on their own." And just like that, Karoline Leavitt had launched a media moment. Within minutes, the clip dominated headlines. Karoline claps back. Press secretary shreds Goldberg, and tariffs and takedowns. A showdown begins. But little did she know this was just the beginning. The morning after Karoline's takedown, The View opened with unusually tense energy. Whoopi Goldberg was in no mood for laughter. The moment she sat in her chair, she pulled off her glasses, stared into the camera, and addressed the elephant in the room. "Well, apparently, I upset some folks yesterday," she began, trying to sound casual but clearly irritated. "And now the White House wants to give me a lecture on blue-collar America? Honey, I've been fighting for the working class since before Karoline Leavitt was out of high school." The audience clapped, but it was tepid. Joy Behar jumped in to help. "I mean, come on. We all know tariffs raise prices. That's just economics 101, isn't it?" Sunny Hostin nodded. "Exactly. Whoopi wasn't insulting Americans. She was challenging bad policy. But Whoopi wasn't done. She says I'm mocking steelworkers? Please. I'm mocking a man who thinks diplomacy means tweeting in all caps and starting trade wars because he didn't like how his steak was cooked." The studio erupted with laughter, but it was laced with tension. The internet had already dubbed this battle #TariffTakedown. And it wasn't going away. Back in Washington, Karoline was in the West Wing preparing her second strike. The president himself had seen her performance the day before and loved it. "Karoline," Trump said during a private meeting in the Oval, "you were tremendous. Better than Kayleigh, better than Sarah. You got the fire. You crushed her. But you know what I want now? She smiled, knowing what was coming. Part 2. Finish it, Trump said with a grin. That evening, Karoline appeared on Hannity. It was a primetime hit. Sean, I don't take lectures on working-class struggle from someone who's been living in Hollywood mansions for the last 30 years, Karoline said confidently. She leaned toward the camera. Whoopi mocks the president's tariffs. But here's what she doesn't mention: American manufacturing is up 14% since the new trade rules took effect. We've seen 28,000 new jobs in Ohio alone. And for the first time in decades, Detroit is hiring instead of laying off. Hannity beamed. Exactly. Karoline continued, she's entitled to her opinions. But she doesn't get to distort facts to suit her narrative. If she really cared about the working class, she'd stop shilling for globalist trade policies that sold out our workers to Beijing. The clip instantly became a social media hit. By midnight, hashtags like hashtag Karoline claps back, hashtag Trump tariffs win, and hashtag Whoopi wrecked were trending on X. Conservative influencers praised her. Liberals scrambled to respond. But the real twist came the next morning when President Trump reposted Karoline's Hannity clip on Truth Social, captioned with, Karoline Leavitt, the future of the Republican Party, destroyed Whoopi Goldberg and exposed the lies about our tariffs. She's a warrior for America. The post racked up over 10 million views within hours. Major outlets had no choice but to cover it. On Capitol Hill, even moderate Republicans started referencing Karoline's stats. She's not just talking, she's backing it up, one senator whispered to a journalist. Karoline was no longer just a spokesperson. She was becoming a movement. But just as she thought the storm was calming, Whoopi fired back in a way no one expected. She announced live on air that she wanted Karoline to appear on The View. We believe in open dialogue, Whoopi said. Karoline, if you're watching, we got a seat for you. Come on. Let's talk tariffs. Let's talk Trump. Let's talk working class America. If you think you've got the facts, let's hear them face to face. The challenge was set. Would Karoline walk into the lion's den? Or would she ignore the call? The nation waited to see. Karoline sat in her West Wing office, the offer from The View playing on repeat across the news networks. Whoopi Goldberg had issued a very public challenge, and the entire country was watching to see what she'd do next. I'm going, Karoline said firmly. Her communications team stared at her in disbelief. Karoline, The View isn't exactly friendly territory. They'll gang up on you. You'll be outnumbered, outmiked, and they'll edit the clips for their narrative. Karoline leaned back in her chair and smiled. Exactly. Which is why I'm going to bring facts and fire. The next morning, the announcement dropped. Karoline Leavitt accepts Whoopi's invite. Will appear live on The View this Friday. Every network scrambled to cover it. Fox News was ecstatic. MSNBC was biting their nails. And across TikTok, Gen Z conservatives and boomers alike were counting down the days. Friday arrived fast. The ABC studios were buzzing like a hornet's nest. Security was tight. Producers were tense. Even the makeup artists knew this wasn't just a talk show taping. It was a political cage match. Karoline entered with the calmness of a seasoned general. Dressed in a white blazer and a subtle American flag pin, she walked into the studio and greeted each co-host with a firm handshake. Even Whoopi. Thanks for coming, Whoopi said flatly. Thanks for inviting me, Karoline replied, smiling coolly. I brought a few numbers with me, just in case we're dealing with actual facts today. The audience murmured. The cameras rolled. The theme music ended. And the fireworks began. So, Whoopi said, we've got Karoline Leavitt here, press secretary for the most tariff-happy administration in recent history. Welcome. Karoline nodded. Thank you, Whoopi. And while we're throwing around labels, let's not forget this tariff-happy administration also happens to be rebuilding American manufacturing. Whoopi smirked. Really? Because I just looked at my grocery bill and saw prices going up. Karoline leaned forward. And you know what else is going up? American jobs. Since the new tariffs took effect, 200,000 new manufacturing positions have been created. Companies are reshoring operations from China. Farmers are getting better prices for their exports. And Middle America, the people Hollywood forgot, are finally seeing results. Joy Behar jumped in. But it's also causing price hikes. That hurts families, doesn't it? Karoline didn't flinch. It depends on who you're fighting for. We're okay with fighting a short-term inconvenience if it means a long-term win for America's independence. Would you rather have cheap electronics or a country that isn't reliant on Beijing for survival? The crowd stirred. Some clapped. Whoopi wasn't amused. And you think Trump's the guy to save America? The guy who caused chaos every time he opened Twitter. Karoline's eyes lit up. He's not tweeting anymore. He's governing. And the results are undeniable. Look beyond the sound bites, look at the steel plants reopening. The tech firms investing in domestic chip production. The record trade renegotiations that you all said couldn't be done. Sunny Hostin interjected. But isn't this about politics? Isn't this about 2028 and creating a campaign narrative? Karoline looked directly into the camera. No. This is about principle. And I didn't come here for political theater. I came here because someone mocked a policy that's helping millions of Americans. And I won't let that go unanswered. The studio went silent. Whoopi leaned back, crossed her arms, and muttered, well, damn. For the first time all week, she was outmaneuvered. The show ended with applause from both sides of the audience, rare and raw. Karoline stood up, shook hands again, and walked off stage like a prizefighter who'd just gone 12 rounds and never missed a beat. Outside, media vans swarmed. But Karoline didn't stop. She turned to the nearest camera and said, if standing up for American jobs makes me the enemy of daytime TV, then so be it. I'd rather be unpopular in Hollywood than forgotten in Ohio. And just like that, she became a conservative icon overnight. But what came next would change her life and career forever. Karoline's appearance on The View was the shot heard round the political world. Within 48 hours, the clip of her calmly dressing down Whoopi had racked up 27 million views across platforms. Even networks that previously dismissed her, like CNN and MSNBC, were running segments on her rhetorical sharpness and her sudden burst of national attention. It wasn't just a social media win. Karoline had broken the mold. In a world where political press secretaries were often reduced to reading scripted sound bites, she had turned the podium into a platform and the mainstream into her battlefield. Back at the White House, President Trump was on cloud nine. She's tremendous. She went in there, looked Whoopi in the eyes, and said, no lies today, lady. Trump exclaimed in a private strategy meeting. We need to put her everywhere. Rallies. Fox. Podcasts. You name it. And so, Karoline began touring not just as a spokesperson, but as a messenger of the administration's economic revival. She visited steel mills in Pennsylvania. She walked through family-run farms in Iowa. She held roundtables with union workers in Michigan. In Ohio, a man in a MAGA hat told her, I ain't voted since Reagan. But you made me believe somebody in D.C. finally gets it. The momentum was real. Karoline was becoming more than a political figure, she was a movement of her own. But not everyone was thrilled. Behind the scenes, Hollywood elites, progressive PACs, and even some moderate Republicans were freaking out. She was young, articulate, passionate, and worst of all to them, dangerous. Because she connected. The hate mail started slowly. Then the threats began. Emails, voicemails, even a strange package that showed up at her D.C. apartment which the Secret Service intercepted. The White House responded immediately. Karoline, you're going under full protection detail, the chief of staff told her. She brushed it off at first. I'm not the president. No, the chief replied, but you're the first person since Trump himself to shake the system this hard. At night, she couldn't sleep. Her parents called in tears. Her phone buzzed constantly with concerned texts from conservative allies and angry rants from haters. Her inbox was a war zone. And yet she didn't back down. She kept showing up. One night, during a town hall in Texas, Karoline stood in front of a crowd of over 2,000 and addressed the threats for the first time. I've been called names. I've been threatened. I've been told to shut up, sit down, and stop fighting for you. But let me be clear, if they think I'll back off because of a few cowards hiding behind anonymous accounts and dark money hit jobs, they've never met a girl from Atkinson, New Hampshire. The crowd roared. And somewhere in New York, Whoopi watched the clip. Quiet. Pensive. Joy Behar nudged her. She's really turning this into something, huh? Whoopi nodded slowly. Yeah. She's more than I gave her credit for. But don't get it twisted, Joy, this isn't over. But the narrative had shifted. Drastically. Karoline Leavitt had gone from White House mouthpiece to national conservative star, even being floated for a future Senate run, or something even bigger. All because she stood her ground. Not just against Whoopi, but against a system that mocked American pride, laughed off working-class pain, and rolled its eyes at the idea that tariffs could mean more than taxes, that they could be tools for sovereignty. But the real final act was about to begin, because Karoline was about to do the unthinkable. Invite Whoopi Goldberg to the White House. It was the headline no one saw coming. Karoline Leavitt invites Whoopi Goldberg to the White House for one-on-one discussion on tariffs. The internet exploded. Some thought it was a trap. Others believed it was a PR stunt. But Karoline meant it. "I'm not afraid of talking," she told reporters. "I'm afraid of what happens when we stop talking." The invite was formal. Signed, sealed, and sent through the proper channels. To the surprise of even her closest friends, Whoopi accepted. The meeting was scheduled for Friday at 2 p.m. in the Roosevelt Room. As expected, the media frenzy was deafening. "Culture clash at the White House," screamed one headline. "Showbiz meets substance," read another. At 1:59 p.m., Whoopi arrived escorted through the gates by Secret Service. She wore a long gray coat, glasses, and a skeptical expression. Karoline stood at the door, calm and confident. "Welcome to the People's House." Whoopi nodded slowly. "Let's see what you've got, kid." The two sat down at a polished mahogany table. No cameras. No aides. Just two women from very different worlds and a pot of hot tea between them. Karoline started first. "I didn't bring you here to argue. I brought you here to listen." Whoopi leaned back. "I've been doing the talking for 40 years, honey. But I'm listening." Karoline handed her a file of charts, stats, personal letters from factory workers across America. A steelworker from Indiana. A single mom from Alabama whose husband found a new job in a textile plant after the tariffs took effect. A third-generation farmer from Missouri who wrote, "Tell President Trump not to blink. China's playing chess. But finally, so are we." Whoopi read in silence. Then Karoline added softly, "We're not just talking about policy. We're talking about pride. Dignity. A country that makes things again." Whoopi looked up. "You really believe all this, don't you?" Karoline nodded. "With everything I have." There was a long pause. Then Whoopi chuckled. "I'll admit something. I thought you were just another smooth-talking spinner when I saw you walk onto that set." Karoline smirked. "And now?" "I still think you're smooth," Whoopi said with a grin, "but you're not just spinning. You're fighting." Karoline poured more tea. "I was raised to believe this country can fix itself if we stop apologizing for existing." That line struck a nerve. Whoopi's face softened. "You know, when I was growing up, my mother used to say, 'America's a mess.' But it's my mess." Karoline smiled. "Exactly. That's what we're fighting for." When the meeting ended, no big photo op happened. No handshake for the cameras. Just a mutual nod of respect. Later that evening, Whoopi returned to The View. Her monologue was simple. "I met Karoline Leavitt today. She's fierce. She's smart. And while we still don't agree on everything, I see now she's fighting for something real. And we need more of that." Karoline, on the other hand, returned to the press briefing room the next morning. A reporter asked, "So, Ms. Leavitt, any regrets about calling out Whoopi?" She replied, without missing a beat, "Absolutely not. I didn't call her out. I called her in." The room fell silent. That line went viral again. She wasn't just a firebrand anymore, she was a bridge builder. A warrior with wisdom. And from that moment on, Karoline Leavitt wasn't just the White House press secretary. She was the new face of a movement. A movement that believed America could stand tall again. Make things again. Believe again. Because sometimes all it takes is one voice to challenge a TV legend and in doing so, change the conversation of a nation.